Dude, pointed stick.
Pointed stick! Pointed stick!
Pointed stick.
Pointed stick.
Pointed stick.
Pointed stick!
Whoa, pointed stick.
That pointed stick.
Pointed stick!
Stick. We don't have any time for your trolling behavior on this channel. It just isn't welcome here. And so, good riddance to you.
A device that you can attach and replace this.
The hell? Hang out a sec, trying to make sure that everything's working. I've been having some technical difficulties today. Looks good. All right. So the idea here is to redo this video. Man, it was choppy as shit. Changes that I've been dealing with. Therefore, yeah, that just didn't work out. It didn't work out very well. That was a new mic. That microphone, I thought maybe it was the room. The room was giving me problems, but it was actually the microphone. It was causing those issues. So, yeah, that's squared away. So I want to play this again a little bit. I believe I put the link in the description. I do got to re-edit this fucking title. Oh, God. I'll re-edit the title real quick while I'm doing this. All right, there we go. So the deal. That's my crap connection in here. I'll just stop this and redo it again. That might be part of the problem that I'm having with all this. Try to keep an eye on it. But so Bitsko did an interview with some sort of podcast, and somebody in my comments asked me to talk about it and look at it. I've already watched it twice now, because this is the second time trying to redo this video to fix it, and so I'm just gonna watch it real quick. And you know what? Just shits and giggles. Let's do this. Let's do this just to make it a little different. Boom. Face reveal. What's up? So let's do a little bit of this. I believe this is where it started. Well, it started getting interesting. He, up until this point, he just kind of talked about his career, how he got into policing, all that sort of stuff. So I didn't think that was very important. This was about the part where they start talking about the event that happened that night, not his personal bullshit. And I believe at the end of this, they start talking about what he's doing now as far as some, I don't know. They talk about it a little bit. It didn't seem all that interesting to me, because it's about cops and cops coming, going through some PTSD and stuff like that.
I'm not looking to stop.
We're going to get into more of that later, but right now, let's get to the heart of the story itself. October 1st, 2017. Why don't you take us there in your boots?
Okay. So
I was a canine sergeant, and we were training dogs. We had a group of new dogs that were going through their, handler academy, and so we were about 9 to 10 minutes away from Mandalay Bay and the Route 91 Festival. And for those that don't know, ultimately what happened that night is an individual, and I agree, I'd never say his name, but an individual had taken an arsenal up to the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. He had multiple semi-automatic rifles affixed with bump stocks. Again, for listeners that don't know, a bump stock is a device that you can attach and replace the stock of a semi-automatic rifle, causing it to, when you pull the trigger, the gun itself bounces, replicating fully automatic fire. So what the cops experienced, what the citizens, what the victims experienced was they were under automatic fire for an extended period of time, which, listen, if you've been a cop for a matter of time, I'm sure you've probably been shot at a couple of times in your career, but how many? That's more like you're in the military at war when you're taking fully automatic gunfire for an extended period of time. Just to kind of give an overview of what happened. I had 2 injuries. Over 455 people were either shot or hit with fragmentation. Over 800 people injured from trampling and trying to get away. So the magnitude is obviously it can be hard to wrap your brain around when you think about
Those
it.
numbers are pretty crazy. Think about 60 killed, 450 hit with bullets. Considering he only fired 1,000 shots, well, fragmentation he mentions too. That's pretty crazy numbers, man. That seems pretty high, to be honest with you. That seems really high, but who knows? Sounds right. Sounds legit so far.
Especially, it's seemingly the bigger that an event like this is, the more you think about it in statistics rather than individual tragedy and individual lives lost. So, but just the magnitude of it was in a scale that you just don't often see in policing, and so just kind of give an overview of what happened that leading into it. So we were training dogs. I used to keep my radio on what we called a scan mode. I could listen to every radio channel at the same time, because in canine, again, it's a fun job. You just hear a code red, you hear a foot pursuit, and you go to it and you search for bad guys. That's the job. And
so I've dealt with those radios. I know what he's talking about. Yeah, those especially the Motorola's, they have we use those where I work. They have a scan feature. It's annoying as shit, but it does have a rationale and reasoning behind it. So basically, when you're on the radio, you hit the scan feature. Anytime somebody talks in any channel that scan feature is set up to, you can hear them talking, and it will show you what channel they're talking on. So that's what he's saying, is that people started yapping on the radio, and then he started on the he's tuned in, it's on, and it probably, who knows what their designation is on radio. It's probably what is it, convention center area command. So it's probably CCAC on the radio. He's seeing that, he's seeing people screaming, freaking out, and that's how he knew what was, I guess, going on here.
We have multiple channels. Las Vegas is a large agency, 3,600 commissioned, over 6,000 employees. Not as big as New York, in case you guys are gonna, hold that against me. We also wear stars, not shields there, but they're all the same. And so, listening to all the radio channels, we're training dogs. I'm still in uniform.
It's crazy how much difference this guy, or how much different this guy looks with facial hair. That's fucking nuts. Okay, dude, so far. Got no complaints with him. He seems like a personable dude.
And another one of my handlers is also in uniform. Everyone else is dressed down because it's bad form to teach a dog to bite someone in uniform for obvious reasons. And I hear on my radio automatic gunfire. That's the first thing I hear. It's not a call for service. It's not someone calling me, hey, you need to go here. It's just I hear automatic gunfire. So I look down at my radio, because in scan mode, it tells you what area command or precinct, depending on where you're at, it's happening. And I look down, it's like our convention center area command. Convention center area command is the Strip, the Las Vegas Strip. So casinos, tourists, not somewhere you would ever hear automatic gunfire unless it was an active shooter situation. So when I looked down at the radio and I saw where it was at, I knew immediately there's an active shooter on the street.
Interesting thing to say. I don't know, man. It's been so long since I've looked at a lot of those videos, but he's claiming that before he even knew what was going on, he's hearing on the radio automatic gunfire. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at some of the videos, try and figure out what he was hearing.
I look at my team. I tell the cops that are not dressed out in their uniforms, get dressed out here, because I don't want them arriving without their vests and gear on. And Dave and I went because we were in full uniform. And so we hop in our cars and begin driving as fast as that Tahoe would take us. I generally drive like an old man. When you have an unsecured dog in the car, you don't really drive fast or take hard corners, or you're going to hear about it and he's going to milk the rest of the shit. But I, we were scooting. Driving down the freeway to get there. I hop on the phone and I call our SWAT commander. Route 91 Harvard, Mandalay. One of the talk about when.
So he called SWAT. Explains why Levi showed up when he did, I guess. Tahoe. They met. I don't know why you put a governor on a police vehicle, but yeah, whatever, dude. 120. I guess they ain't gonna work in LA, man, when you got the chases all the fucking time. But yeah, I guess, man. He is a police, but still 120 is a little fast for a police dog. But I don't know why you put a governor on a police vehicle.
I teach my class is when.
And at this point, he's with, Dave. Is it Matchco? I can't even remember the names anymore. I remembered it the other day when I did this video the first time. But yeah, I can't remember now.
Responding to almost any critical incident, there's always going to be an amount of chaos. And that obviously goes up the bigger the incident is. Active shooter, any active shooter, there's going to be a large amount of chaos and trying to figure out what's going on. So it's easy to look back on events like this and say, oh, it was one, white male adult, older shooting down on a crowd. But at the time, it sounds like Las Vegas is under attack, right? You don't.
So I'm glad he said that, man, because that's something that I think gets lost in translation with a lot of people these days. A lot of people within this thing. A lot of chaos, a lot of shit happening all at once, man. It gets I can imagine it gets crazy because just where I work is not life or death situation. Shit gets fucking crazy real quick. But we're all sitting here Monday morning quarterbacking this thing into the. That makes a lot of sense to me, right? It makes a lot of sense that you got a lot of chaos, a lot of stuff going around. Now he's going to talk about how he wasn't sure what exactly was going on, right? Didn't know if it was a single shooter, multiple shooters. I mean, realistically, we're 8 years into this and people still think there's multiple shooters involved in this thing. So, these people are in the moment. They have no idea. They have very limited information. That's the thing too, right? Because at this point, all he knows, he's hearing gunfire on the radio, automatic gunfire on the radio. He hears cops freaking the fuck out on the radio. He doesn't know where the shot's coming from. I don't believe at this point. I think they knew it was from the Mandalay Bay. So obviously that girl was on the radio at some point before this happened. So, saying it's coming from the Mandalay Bay because he's going to talk about how they responded to the Shark Reef, and that's why. So, yeah, I mean, the chaos of the situation in his mindset at that point, I'm guessing, what he's got going on is he just knows there's somebody shooting. It's a fucking automatic fucking rifle, and they're shooting out of the Mandalay Bay.
Don't know what's going on. We don't know initially for the first several minutes that the suspect was even shooting from the Mandalay Bay across the street. You have a mic open at the front of the because it's a concert where the talent had ran off stage. So you have a microphone open. So now you're hearing gunshots coming from the stage because it's coming through the mic, through the speakers at the front of the stage. All the suspect has to do is move his rifle a couple inches, and rounds are happening at one entrance, happening by the stage, happening at another entrance. So there was a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. There will always be that when you're responding to an active shooter. There's always going to be an amount of chaos.
So it's good that you explained that too. I mean, in a lot of videos, I've never really heard the gunfire coming out of the speakers. I've never been able to differentiate that as far as any of that stuff goes. I'm sure it's there. I'm sure October 1 Sounds probably has a million videos on it that I, just didn't get to. But yeah, I've never really, paid too much attention to that. And then, he's just, basically talking about the chaos and craziness that's going on. Like you said, that they didn't know at first that, it was coming from Mandalay Bay. Obviously, we know we should be able to get a idea when that was actually known by the girl on the radio that was screaming it was coming from the Mandalay Bay.
And so initially we're driving to the concert grounds, and we have our own radio in K9 that we could communicate aside from the radio that we can talk to dispatch and hear what's going on. So I called the SWAT commander. He did all call, like, hey, every SWAT guy that's out and about, head to this scene, because we knew based on what we had, all the resources that we could get, we needed.
So that would also explain why the SWAT came in piecemeal, right there. I'm guessing. I don't know if that's the right call to make, but it sounds like the call that was made by Bitsko here. Well, it's call that he made that then was made by whoever the SWAT commander was, which I think was Levi. I think he says later Levi was in charge. So he calls on the radio, says what's going on, says they need SWAT. SWAT calls up, says every SWAT person just get there. Don't worry about, basically they weren't worried about staging at this point. They just showed up, and they all showed up piecemeal. And that's why we kind of had clusterfuck with the SWAT teams being all scattered, which is weird because we only, I think, had 3 that I know of that were actually there on the scene, but whatever.
And so as we're driving there, discussing with Dave Newton, who's the other K9 handler, like, how we're going to arrive, where we're going to go. You have as we're getting closer, we realize that it's coming from the Mandalay Bay because the officers on the ground who are getting shot at are still able to relay information on where this is coming from and allow us the opportunity to respond and take care of it. And you had officers that were running across the street to try and get up there. I would say most of the cops that were there were trying to have an impact. But we're still humans. You're going to have failures. You're going to have officers that, at times can't manage the emotions, that manage the chaos, manage the anxiety and all that with it. But a lot.
So a nice little underhanded dig. Now, this guy's not I don't think he's a cop anymore over there. So he's allowed to talk shit. And basically that's what he just did. He talked some shit. Now he's not towing the entire party line of the police department. He's saying that there were failures. I don't know if he's talking necessarily about Hendricks and Varson. You listen to the LV Cops TV, man, they had somebody else that they were targeting that they were not happy with that was there that night. Not sure exactly who that was. I don't think they even named him, but I don't think it was Varson and Hendricks, because they said it was somebody that was in command or something like that. But yeah, that was a little bit of a dig on the LVMPD, and some of the cops weren't doing the right thing for the most part. He seemed to think they were.
A lot of officers were trying to have an impact and stop this guy from killing people. And so as we're arriving, we realize it's coming from the Mandalay Bay, and Dave and I are talking, and we're like, let's go in through the Shark Reef. So if you picture, you have Las Vegas Boulevard. Across the street, you have a concert with 22,000 attendees, all under fire. You have people dying, people being hit. Officers doing the best they can to get people out, because also what happens during an active shooter is, and when shooting happens, what do people generally do? They hit the deck, they get down, they get low. But when someone's shooting from an elevated position, what does that do? It now makes them an immobile target. So you have officers on the scene.
There you go. Oh man, I'm glad he said that. Yeah, obviously, the right strategy for somebody that's shooting on the ground is going to be to get down. The right strategy for somebody shooting from above you is not going to be the same. So, that explains a lot of things like the Hoover theories of people being shot in different various parts, various areas, the headshots, the dramatic amount of headshots that were, supposedly a dramatic amount of headshots, because that argument sucks. But like, when you got out of 60 people, I forget how many were headshots. Let's say 15, just for the hell of it. I don't remember, but let's say it's 15. Well, it's 15 headshots. Now, generally, the argument there is fairly straightforward and simple. 15 people were shot in the head. And I think there were probably a couple more, because at least we know of one that a girl was shot in the mouth that survived. But generally, when a person's shot in the head, they're not going to make it, right? They're going to probably die. It's not going to turn out well. So, we can say for sure we know 16 people, just for argument's sake, were shot in the head. And out of 400 and that'd be 510. Out of 510, you had 16 people shot in the head. So the numbers get a little skewed. The numbers people generally use, 15 out of the 60. Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot. And you'd be right. That is a lot. But when you look at it from the overall perspective of how many people were actually hit by bullets, it doesn't look as crazy as it did. And why were they hitting the head? Because people were ducking, people were doing all kinds of things. People had their asses to the Mandalay Bay, people had their heads to the Mandalay Bay. People were laying down, people were running, people were doing all kinds of shit, right? He was just shooting into a sea of bodies and, hitting random shit, which is, I think, why we get such a high hit count. And he was shooting, I believe, the frangibles. So, those things are splitting apart as they're hitting the pavement, and if they are actually hitting pavement. Friend of mine that was shot twice, he was saying this story, and I never really understood it. I still really don't completely understand it. But he was saying, as he was laying there and he was looking up, he could see the bullets hitting the oh god, I don't even know how to describe it. The aluminum that the tents were being held up by, and it's hitting that. It's sparking off of it and shattering. So when you have these rounds hitting anything at all, now they're just fragmentation flying around randomly. So, I mean, it does seem like a lot, the 500 out of, 1,000, 1,100 rounds, whatever you fired. But I don't know. In the end, I can explain it. It does seem like a lot.
It's a realizing what's happening, trying to get people out to evacuate and get people to cover and get people to safety. But they're able to relay where it's at. On the other side of Las Vegas Boulevard, you have the Mandalay Bay Tower, a large hotel casino. The suspect was on the 32nd floor, so pretty high up, had a view of the entire concert venue. There was nowhere for anybody to go, very little cover. And he had planned this meticulously for that purpose. Through internet searches and police tactics and all of that, he had a plan, which then we have to react to in the moment under fire.
Now, I don't know about that whole internet searches, police tactics, this being some meticulously planned event. I mean, obviously it was planned very well, because this guy did, he did end up with the largest mass shooting in modern U.S. history, but. Looking up, do police use explosives or does SWAT use explosives? Stuff like that. That doesn't sound to me like a whole lot of research, unless there's more to it than just that. I'm not really sure about that. Hold on a sec. I always seem to get text messages while I'm doing this. Anyway.
So Dave and I have a good discussion. We go into the Shark Reef. You have the Mandalay Bay, 100,000 square feet of convention space, and then the Shark Reef, which is like a aquarium, because Las Vegas went through a period where they wanted to make it family friendly. For the listeners, for you two, if you're coming to Vegas, don't bring kids if you can avoid it, because you're not going to have as much fun. That's my 2 cents of someone that grew up in Vegas. You can still have fun. There's aquariums and all that, but you won't have so much fun. So Dave and I decided we were going to go into the Shark Reef. I asked for more officers to meet us there on the radio. And so we get into the parking lot, because had we tried to go to the front of the Mandalay Bay to go up, we would have been in direct fire of the suspect in his field of fire. There really wasn't a way to get in the front of the Mandalay Bay Tower without that happening. But because we both, we're both from Vegas, we know we were able to go in through the Shark Reef and make our way. But I asked for more officers, and you always think, okay, I'm going to have my team.
Now I always think about this, like, I don't know, for those of you who've been to Vegas, it's nuts. It's nuts. These hotels are fucking massive. I mean, they're city blocks, and there's multiple entrances. There's I know Mandalay Bay, for instance, you got the upper valet, you have the lower valet, you have I'm sure you have multiple service entrances in the back, which we've seen on maps. I've never driven back there because there's no reason to. There's an entrance from the parking garage that you can get into the casino. There's this Shark Reef entrance he's talking about, which then there's also the Uber pickup spot on the other side over there. So, I mean, there's just, these things are massive. So it always boggles the mind, I guess you'd say, for lack of a better fucking term, because I hate that term. But it's interesting to think, like, you're a cop out there and you have to know it. You probably don't have to, but to know all the entrances to these various casinos and hotels is insane. How to get into them, all that sort of stuff, other than just the regular tourist entrance of the, which is the Self Park. It's kind of nutty, man. I didn't even know there was a Shark Reef entrance over there. I don't know why there even really kind of would be, because I wouldn't think anybody's. I don't know. You're not pulling up to the Shark Reef to get out of your car like he did just to walk in there. No, that doesn't happen. So, whatever, dude. Just rambling.
I'm going to have, SWAT team and all that, but that's not generally who's going to respond and react and solve an active shooter, right? It's going to be patrol. I had 3 detectives in khakis, a polo like I'm wearing, and a tac vest, and their pistols ready to go. And we're a big agency. I recognize their face. I knew them. I obviously know them really well now, but they show up as part of the team, and all I know about them is they're cops and they're ready to go. And we have similar training when it comes to, because we're on the same agency, and I know the training that we have when it comes to. So that was my team. I had one K9 guy. He and I were both in our SWAT gear, because our K9 team works a lot with our SWAT team, been through SWAT school and all that. So, and almost every mission K9 is with SWAT. So him and I have that experience and the gear. And then I have detectives that they just have the right mindset and ready to go. We gear up, make our way through the aquarium, through the convention space, and all our gear onto the casino floor. And this is like the first real eerie sensation is, we all know that there's literal chaos and horror happening outside, but they build these things so you don't know what's happening outside. There were still people gambling and eating and drinking inside the casino, reacting to us and our gear, making our way to the elevators.
I never really thought about it this way, but he's absolutely right. It's insane. You will not find windows in casinos unless you're up on Fremont Street. That's a whole different ball game and a whole different scene. You won't find clocks in casinos. They don't want you to know what's going on in the real world. They want you to be stuck in their little environment. But I never really thought about that. It's like, yeah, I mean, obviously you see people gambling, clueless to what's happening outside when they're walking through the casino. But never really thought about it on that level where it's like everybody inside that vacuum had no fucking idea whatsoever what was going on outside, even though all hell was breaking loose outside. It's pretty crazy to think about. Just like, I don't know, a couple 100 feet away from you, people are dying, and there's somebody a couple 100 feet above you killing those people. It's just insane.
So as we get on the casino floor, we stop it. There's a security like podium with a security officer. I grab one of my detectives. I grab a security officer. I'm like, go to surveillance, get me intel. Because again, you're going to be in an intel deficit in the beginning of this. You're going to have a lot of information, but as far as actionable intel, it's just you have to wade through the chaos and the yelling and all of that to find out what is my plan? What do I need to do in a simple plan? It's, even from leadership or an officer that's hearing this, that you need to have that simple plan of, I need to make my way to the bad guy and take him out. Plain and simple. Like, that can be your plan, but verbalizing that and knowing that can help push through some of the hard emotions of that anxiety and the fear and all that. This is my plan. We need to go do this. We need to take care of it.
Now, like this guy, I mean, realistically, I don't know what his consulting LLC stuff is back there. I know he does talk about at the end. I didn't really listen to it because I wasn't really all that interested. But I do like the way that this guy talks as far as leadership and stuff like that going on. Because he is right. You have, because I've been in positions where I've had multiple people that I've been in charge of, upwards of 30 to 40. And he's absolutely right. I mean, you have a job to do. And of course, it's not even I'm not trying to compare myself to these cops, at all. I'm just trying to explain why I agree with what he's saying. And I don't think this just goes for policing and crazy events like this. But when all hell starts breaking loose, you have a job to do. What is that job? That you focus and you try to get that done in whatever way you can. And I just like how, he's talking about how that was the focus of him at that moment. And I mean, to be honest with you, I know a lot of people will dunk on this guy, but so far, everything I've heard, he's pretty solid.
It was funny, well, not funny, but so that detective's partner is like, okay, I'll go with them to security because we still don't know. Is there somebody on the casino floor? Is there someone on the other side of this giant building shooting people? And I did a good count of my team. I'm like, nope, he has to go alone. And
right there, right? They still don't know what's going on. And so he's having to make decisions like that where, he's going to send this guy off to him by himself, but he needs that guy to do what he's about to do. And I believe he's about to go into how that scared the shit out of him because he didn't know if he was sending that guy to go get killed, because at this point, they still don't know if there's multiple shooters. Like I said, 8 years later, we're still arguing that. But, they don't know if there's multiple shooters. There's a terrorist attack. They don't know what the fuck is going on. All they know is there's automatic gunfire coming down from this building into the lot across the street. Because at this point, I'm guessing they already know what's happening in a general sense as far as gunshots coming out of the building, going down into the lot, killing people across the street. But that's all they know. That's all they know. They don't know that it's one dude. They don't know it's an old dude. They don't know what the fuck is happening. All they know is gunfire is coming out of this building and landing across the street.
So there's points to this that, when you reflect or you look back on it, there's like, I always just call them like sticking points. Like, okay, it seemed innocuous. Like, okay, I know we were going to go make our way to that next room, and we're most likely going to be going up there to a gunfight. So I need as many people as I can, but also, you don't want to send a cop to be by themselves because not all security is armed in these casinos. And, like that, I remember thinking, oh gosh, I hope that guy doesn't die.
defend without the mess?
Was kind of important as well. Let me see if I can fast forward through this freaking thing. So he's Monday morning quarterbacking his own actions, and that's another thing that I think is important for people, and especially people that are I don't want to say in charge, man, because that's just a rotten word, man. People in a leadership position, man. People in any position, really. I mean, to go back and look on your actions and say, how could I have done that better? I think that's important for most people. And I think the problem with a lot of people, the problem I happen to have with people that I work with and, people in general, is the people that are incapable of that. At some point, when you get that arrogant, egotistical person, does everything perfect and is God's gift to the world, they are in a set of, they have a problem with learning, right? You're never going to learn because you're already perfect. So there's no reason to learn. And you're never going to get any better. So you are stuck at the point that you are. The level you're at is the level you will stay the rest of your life until you are willing to accept that you are not perfect and you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to, that you're going to always need to improve. So, I think that's kind of what he's articulating. He's not articulating it well is the problem, but I think that's what he's saying.
Country. This is America's
What?
seltzer.
We're still in a fucking ad. Are you kidding me? All right.
There's informal leaders and there's formal leaders. And as a sergeant, it's funny. You're one of the guys to a certain extent, but you're a boss at the same time and you're a leader. So you're a sergeant and you're on the scene of this, and you've got to not just control your own emotions, your own actions, your own that. You've got to control others. And I had had the opportunity to watch your body cam. And, it's out there, guys. You can see this stuff if you haven't. I recommend you look at it. I'm always.
You don't have time for emotions, all that sort of stuff. I don't know what this guy's talking about. I mean, this guy's a cop also in, I believe, New York or whatever. But generally, when shit starts happening and shit starts going fucking crazy, you don't have time for all that. You don't have the luxury of that. You don't have the luxury of freaking out and freezing up and doing all that sort of stuff. You just have to make things happen and get things done and figure out what is going on and how you can fix it and how you can keep the operation moving, whatever it happens to be. I don't know what this guy's going on about. This guy probably was a beat cop. He probably wasn't in the position that Bitsko was ever in. So I'm guessing that's what's going on here. Is he was probably never in any kind of leadership role within his department. Maybe he was. Maybe I'm completely wrong. And maybe he's. I don't know.
Leadership and how I want to learn from it all the time. You made a comment to your guys on the way up there about that I think was amazing. Beers are on me after this guy. And that's not the exact words, but the gist of it was, guys, we're going to be okay. This is going to be over. It's going to be a heck of a story, and I'm buying beers later. The confidence that you showed to them, that little thing, brilliant yet genuine. It was part of who you are.
Just out of personal thing. I thought that was cheesy as fuck, but whatever.
No, I said that with the whole intent is you can feel the energy of your team. I know that I was an experienced canine handler. We go on nothing but critical incidents, and I knew that I was inside. Like on the outside, you watch my body camera, I look really calm. I can assure you and your listeners, I wasn't. This was one of those situations where it's like, this is, I've never been on anything like this. I don't know what we're going to walk into. But I also know that, I have a team that's looking at me, and I can control if I'm chaotic, if I'm all over the place, if I'm exhibiting outward fear. I was scared. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys. Like, oh no, this was my job, and I put my fist up in the air, and not in my city. Let's go get them. No, I mean this stuff is scary. It's real. But I could feel it, and I just wanted yep, we're gonna get beers later. This is normal, because then there's that, oh well, if Bees thinks this is okay and it's gonna turn out, then it must be. I'm trying to bring them down because I also have an idea of what we're headed into.
And there it is. Like he just articulated it. He just didn't spell it out, completely. But yeah, as in that leadership role, you don't have the luxury of showing emotion or anything like that. You are. I mean, I hate to say it, you're in charge. You're the rock in the hard place, man. That you have to deal with this, and you have to be the leader. You can't crack, and if you crack, the whole group cracks. So it's just not. Yeah, it's not something you can do. You don't have the luxury of emotions when it comes to that sort of thing. So you have to have that demeanor that everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to work out. Don't fucking worry about it. We're going to take care of this. We're going to handle this shit. We can do it.
It's I heard this story. It was the 49ers. They're in the Super Bowl. They're in the huddle, and Joe Montana comes in the huddle, and they have one drive to go and win the game. And everyone's all on edge. And Joe Montana goes to the huddle, like, "Hey guys, you see John Candy's up in the stands?" Everyone's like, "What is he talking about, John Candy?" Well, because he would, when it's like, okay, well, that was intentional on his part. He's a leader, and there's leaders in all fields, private, sports, public, and all that. And it's, trying to understand what the team needs to then be successful in, our response, right?
Hey, you hear him starting to crack, dude. He's starting to think about this. So he's starting to kind of lose his composure here. And he does a little bit. And then again, the other thing that was interesting is he admitted he was scared during all this, which, I mean, how can you not be? You don't know what's coming at you. You don't know what you're about to face down. And you think that you're going into a firefight, right? Into a fucking casino, hotel to get into a firefight. That's got to be pretty intense.
So, but I mean, it is, but I can tell you, you don't have to be like, you're not born a leader, you're not born fearless. It's a choice, and how you regulate your emotions and still act. And that's one of the things that I teach and I talk about now is you can feel these anxiety and fear and that wanting to freeze and recognize it and still push past it. And that's exactly what that was. Is like on the inside, I was, my heart was beating a mile a minute. I didn't know what we were going into. I was anxious. I didn't want to, be that sergeant that got his team killed for no reason. I knew we were going into just a very dangerous, a very dangerous, unknown situation. But at the same time, it's like, I didn't have a problem sending people and myself going into danger. I just didn't want to make the wrong decision. That's where my anxiety was at. I'm going to make the wrong decision and get my team killed. But yeah, I mean, I was feeling inside. We leave the security podium and we make our way to.
I think he explains it later, but that's the other thing, right? So this guy, he is taking a leadership stance here, right? And that's what this seems like this is all about. That's his life now. I didn't realize that's, because I watched this a couple weeks ago, but apparently that's what he's doing, right? He's teaching people how to, leadership. That's what he's doing. And so he's in that leadership mindset. So he's talking a lot about that. And one of the other things he just said that actually is very interesting to me is, you never put somebody in a position you wouldn't put yourself in, right? So you always lead by example. This isn't the military. You lead from the front, I guess, unless you're in the military, but but generally, on a regular job or something like that, when you're in charge of people and you're doing whatever it is, if you're not willing to do it yourself, then how can you expect to send somebody else? Because that's going to cause some problems within your rank and file. That's going to cause some resentment within your rank and file. You tell somebody to go clean toilets. If you're not willing to clean toilets yourself, then you're just going to piss that person off. They're going to feel like they're being picked on, like they're having to do the dirty work that you're not willing to do yourself. You just don't want to do that, man. So you always lead by example.
The elevators, we had shut down the elevators on the way there to try and easier contain where the suspect's at. And now, for those that don't know, what we're hearing on the radio at this point is you had 22,000 people at a concert automatically under fire. So what do they, you talk about ICS and we're going to evacuate and we're going to bring buses to get people out. We didn't have to do any of that. Everybody self-evacuated. I mean, I'll talk about it later to a point, but you had citizens doing extremely brave things, throwing injured people in the back of pickup trucks because it was a country concert, so there's a lot of pickup trucks. Throwing wounded people, driving to the hospital, complete strangers, risking their own lives to help other people. But what happens with that is you had 22,000 people all evacuate, go into surrounding businesses, saying there's an active shooter, bleeding, shot, hurt.
Okay, before we get to that, I disagree with what he's saying right there. We didn't have to evacuate because they were self-evacuating. Now, fuck you. If they would have allowed the ambulances in there, we may have saved some people that weren't saved. We may have saved some suffering, some misery. Some people might have had limbs that they don't have anymore, stuff like that. Now, that to me is a frustrating way to outline that. So, where before he was kind of shit talking his own department, now he's glazing his own department for the way that they acted that night. And that was the one, I think, extreme failure. And it's always been my point of view that was an extreme failure as far as what happened on that night and the immediate aftermath. We have a guy on what is it, Guile Street or whatever the fuck that guy was. I don't think it's Guile Street. I can't remember the name of that street, but he's over there screaming, he needs an ambulance. He needs an ambulance. He needs an ambulance. And he was screaming for like a half an hour before one showed up. And that was just one. And then they filled that up with like 5 or 6 people. You're supposed to have one in an ambulance. So, they filled that up with a bunch of people. I think one of the girls in that ambulance actually passed away later. And, whereas if that ambulance would have been, there when he originally started calling for it, you probably would have had 57. We'd probably be up to 59 people dead, at least for that one incident, because that girl started having problems breathing and she was shot through the lung from the back and she didn't make it. As far as I know, that was one of the casualties. So, yeah, that is something that I definitely disagree with. I think that was stupid. I think they should have cleared that site. I mean, he's talking about having 6,000 officers or whatever the fuck within his department. Even if only half of them were there, you could have cleared that site when the shooting stopped at 10:15. You could have brought ambulances right on there. You could have driven right up the front. And you could have started evacuating people on ambulances that were hurt instead of expecting them to jump in the back of pickup trucks and have some cowboy fucking drive them to a hospital, not being from that city, not knowing where the fuck the hospital even is. I mean, to me, that is a failure. That is an extreme failure. And he's writing it down as an L. That's a W, man. I mean, he's writing it down as a W. That's an L, dude. You lost. You fucked that one up. That the powers that be that were there that night dealing with this stuff, they fucked that up. And fuck that. And I want to stop that before he goes into the next thing he's about to talk about.
So what do all those businesses do is they call in active shooters as well. So I'm hearing on the radio, active shooter in New York, New York.
And once again, okay, so now he's talking about all the shooters around he's going to talk about the Bellagio. He's going to talk about all that stuff. If you would have contained the scene, if your department would have contained the scene along with the fire department, along with the ambulances and stuff like that, private companies, all that sort of shit. If you guys would have contained the scene and actually done your own evacuation instead of these people self-evacuating, you wouldn't have had this problem. You wouldn't have had this issue. You wouldn't have had the majority of these calls going out saying people are shot here, because nobody's going to jump in an Uber when there's an ambulance right next to them, when they're bleeding out. That's just not going to happen. So now you're explaining another failure of that night. You're adding on to the failure you just talked about as being a success. And no, that was a failure. And it wasn't his failure, because he was up in his thing up in the casino. It had nothing to do with him, but it was a failure. And I don't know why he's glazing so hard on this. That was definitely a failure.
Active shooter at the airport, active shooter at Caesars, and all this. So this, it felt as though Las Vegas at the time was under.
Yeah, you had people walking onto a fucking airport, dude. Like you had, that's not a thing, dude. That's not supposed to happen. You had people walking around on tarmacs. That's crazy, dude. You don't do that. But it happened, and it happened because of a failure of containing the scene, in a timely fucking manner. You had cops on the ground over there, but they weren't worried about containing the scene. They even said over the radio, we got to stop the shooter before we have more casualties. Don't worry about the casualties. Bro, you can do multiple things. You can do both, right? You should be able to do both. You bring an ambulance onto the lot, it starts getting shot at. Okay, drive that ambulance out and get the fuck out and stop, But when you got emergency services that are there to save lives, but yet they're afraid to save lives, and they're not going to save lives until we stop the shooter, you wasted a bunch of time. You got a bunch of people possibly killed. That's a loss, man. It's a total loss.
A coordinated attack. Like, that's what the information that we had at the time. I've talked with some of the people that we made entry with, and after, like, oh, we were fully expecting to breach the store. That's where we were at mentally with it. That's
important. That's very important what you just said. They did not know what they were up against. He's been saying this through this whole thing. They didn't know what they were up against. And he was thinking in the back of his head that they were going to run into a hit squad or something crazy like that. One of the Hoover hit squads. And, but they just didn't know. They didn't know how many people were going to be in this room, what kind of firefight they were about to get into. They had no fucking idea. And I think that's important to understand when we're talking about how long it took them to get into that room, all the planning that they did before they went into that room, waiting for Levi Hancock to show up to have an idea what to do about this situation. I think that's kind of important, and it does explain why two cops are gung-ho to go run down the hallway and get into the room when they first went up there, 10:17. And suddenly, once they got up there, they looked down that hallway and said, oh, fuck, no, we ain't doing this. Because you're not going to live through that. Just one guy was going to take them both out. If they thought that maybe there was a possibility of there being multiple people in there or a whole team of people in there, no, that wasn't going to happen. You're not going to do that.
Make our way to the elevators. We get on the elevator. I'm joined by another team. We have, I have a detective sergeant from Vice with a couple detectives, patrol guys. I have my team, which is some K9 guys and patrol guys. And again, you think, oh, I'm going to have my tactical team, I'm going to have that, but you just have the people that are ready to go and handle business. We come up with a quick plan. So you had security that was brought down a couple floors after they were shot, because when the suspect, before he began his shooting, there was a security guard on the floor checking another door. The suspect began shooting through the door at that security guard, striking him in the leg, which is.
Now, isn't that an interesting way he just posed that, right? Let's back that up. What are we at? We're at 36:49. I know this is gonna this should stir up some shit, the way he said this. But I don't know.
Security that was brought down a couple floors after they were shot, because when the suspect, before he began his shooting, there was
after they were shot. Now, I'm not going to put anything on that. I know what he's saying. He's saying Campos. He's not talking about security. We're all fucking gunned down and shit now.
Security guard on the floor checking another door. The suspect began shooting through the door at that security guard, striking him in the leg, which is how we were able to find the suspect's room to begin with. Again, group effort. It's not just police.
Wait. I thought I heard that differently the first time I heard that. We're going back.
So what do all those businesses do is they call in active shooters as well. So I'm hearing on the radio, active shooter at New York, active shooter at the airport, active shooter at Caesars, and all this. So this, it felt as though Las Vegas at the time was under a coordinated attack. Like that's what the information that we had at the time. I've talked with some of the people that, we made entry with, and after like, oh, we were fully expecting to breach the store and run into like ISIS. It's 2017 at the time. And that's where we were at mentally with it. So we make our way to the elevators. We get on the elevator. I'm joined by another team. We have, I have a detective sergeant from Vice with a couple detectives, patrol guys. I have my team, which is some K9 guys and patrol guys. And again, you think, oh, I'm going to have my tactical team, I'm going to have that, but you just have the people that are ready to go and handle business. We come up with a quick plan. So you had security that was brought down a couple floors after they were shot, because when the suspect, before he began his shooting, there was
suspect, before he began shooting, there was a security guard that was checking one of the doors on the floor, I think is how he words it. So before he started shooting, that I mean, I get some of the other errors and things that he's saying, because he's got a weird way of contexting this stuff. But that's a weird way to say that. Before he started shooting, this guy was shot.
Security guard on the floor checking another door. The suspect began shooting through the door at that security guard, striking him in the leg, which is how we were able to find.
So he just created a timeline of Campos being shot at before he started shooting out the window. He said before he started shooting, he shot at the security guard. So he just created a timeline right there.
The suspect's room to begin with. Again, group effort. It's not just police. It's the fire department, EMS, security, citizens. Everybody came. Dispatch came together, and I would be very remiss not to mention the calm, clear voice of dispatch during these events, keeping us calm. But
yeah, except for one of them. But yeah, other than that, well, no, dispatch was okay. It was the 911 callers that were having issues.
When that security officer was brought down, what was relayed to me on the radio is you have security in a shootout on the 29th floor, and you have a suspect in the room on the 32nd floor. So I told the other team, there's a couple cops on the 32nd floor with eyes on the door. Get up to them. We're going to go to the 29th floor, take care of whatever shooting is happening there, because I also knew in that I didn't want somebody behind us that we didn't clear.
See, that's something I didn't realize. I don't remember. I think there was a security guard that was saying something was happening on the 29th floor, but I don't know where he came up with that. I don't remember him actually saying that they were going after a shooter on the 29th floor. I thought they were just clearing floors underneath but I don't know.
Deal with to go to the room, fighting a war on two fronts, for lack of a better term. And I don't like comparing policing to war ever. So that's something that I've always tried to avoid. But we make our way to the 29th floor. We start to clear it and realize, okay, this isn't like, there's not a shooting here. Starting to realize, okay, this was just misinformation that by the time it relays, under stress from security to security dispatch to our dispatch to us, it's just that's the nature of it. There's chaos, and you're going to have to overcome that. So once we realized that, my team.
He does talk about the nature of chaos, how chaotic this event was. So, I mean, and he's talking about the game of telephone. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
We make our way up to the 32nd floor, and there's some times that I'll talk about, we were lucky, or we, just certain things happen that had to happen for it to turn out the way it did. And it's hard to talk about that during such a tragedy, but because we called SWAT as soon as we did, I had a SWAT officer who also teaches around the country, named Levi, explosive breaching, who wasn't far, who made it to the scene to have an impact. Generally, you're not going to have SWAT on something like this.
That's gonna stir up some. I'm surprised Hoover hasn't caught on to that one yet. But yeah, I mean, what are the odds? The guy that runs around teaches how to breach doors ends up being the guy that shows up. But I mean, hey, he might have thought that's what I'm doing. I'm going straight to that damn door, and because that's my job. But I don't know. Yeah, it is. It is very coincidental.
But because of the nature of how far we had to traverse to get to the suspect's room, he was able to show up. So as we're going across and we're going through, the floors to get up to the 32nd floor, end up going through a door, and him and we almost clink barrels of our rifles. Like, and I'll tell you, I took a deep breath because yes, I'm a sergeant. I was also the only person on my team with a rifle because not every cop in Metro carried a rifle. It was a specialized class and training that you have to go through. And so I was the only one on my team with one. So I had to also be the point because I knew the weapon systems that the suspect had based on what we were hearing and the amount of chaos and damage that he was causing. So I was able to take a deep breath because, yeah, listen, I've been to SWAT school and K9, but all he does is the tactical, this kind of thing. And I was able to kind of take a step back and be more of a sergeant, still there, still with my rifle, still, ready to do what I had to do, but also try and control some of the team movements, who's behind us, who's making sure, who's communicating with other teams. And I was concerned also about a blue on blue. Anytime you have chaos, worried about stepping out in a hallway, running into another team who's their adrenaline's up, and something tragic happening where an officer fire upon another officer. Well, he had gone up to the 32nd floor with his team of patrol officers, and because he grabbed a couple cops and it went, it was able to see the suspect's door. So that was on the 32nd floor. So when you picture it, and it's a little harder through this medium if you can't show pictures or whatnot. You have a lot of the hotels in Vegas built around the time that the Mandalay Bay was. You have an elevator in the middle, elevator bank and multiple elevators, and then you have wings going off of those elevators. So Mandalay Bay has 3 wings going off those elevators. Long hallway with rooms on each side of the hallway, and at the very end you have double doors, which is a suite, which was one of the 2 rooms the suspect had. So we talk about tactics or fatal funnel. You have 250 yards of a fatal funnel where the suspect had already shot through the door to try and traverse.
Are they 250 yards? I thought they were only about 100 yards. I could be wrong. I thought I MapQuest or did that on a Google Maps and figured out we're 100 yards, but I don't know.
First, well, Levi obviously getting eyes on it, we went down a floor to the 31st floor and made our way up right underneath the suspect's door, where there was a stairwell, fire escape stairwell, and
his timeline's a little off because he said Levi was already up there, and now he's talking about how they all went up there. I don't know. His timeline's, or I mean but he's doing this all off memory, so he's not watching the video and explaining it as he's watching it. So I get it, but yeah, he's kind of a little confused here, or confusing me at least.
Door that led out to his room. But again, we talk about the difficulties of responding to something. We're responding to somebody's plan, and we have to come up through our training and navigate however creative this evil person was to cause as much damage. So when we get up to the door, so you have the suspect's double.
That's crazy to think about. Like, that's not something I normally think about, but that's crazy to think about, that he's the way he's described that is somebody has a plan. They depending on how meticulous they were within their planning, these guys' job is to foil that plan that this person has. And that's kind of nutty, right? That's not a normal thing.
Doors at the end of the hallway. If you're facing it, to the right is the secondary room. So you had 135 was the suite. To the right was a secondary room that he had. To the left of his doors was this stairwell, fire escape stairwell. And so we get to that door, and the suspect had screwed that door shut with the L bracket because he was trying to funnel us down the hallway. Again, I had a breacher with me who had
So that's an interesting way of putting it, right? And I think he's correct, but I don't know if that L bracket was there for that exact purpose. It makes sense, and at least from this guy's perspective, that's what it was, because obviously it the L bracket did make a problem for them. So it does make sense that his mind would go there. But honestly, I think the L bracket was actually to keep people from coming down that hallway that he could not see, because he had a view of the entirety of that hallway with his camera set up. But if somebody came up that, even if he had the camera, the Logitech camera, even if he had that, the webcam, even if he had that set up to where it was facing the stairwell, which I don't think we've determined that. I think he does talk about this later. But even if he had that facing the stairwell, you still have an issue, right? And even if you're watching that camera, which he probably wasn't, because that camera was set up to the laptop in 134, and it was in a weird spot in the hallway there on the cart, as far as what we could see in the evidence. He would not see that camera when he's in 135. He wouldn't be watching that camera, and I doubt he's dragging around that laptop with that cable that it was attached to all through the 135, 134. That didn't happen. So I think I can say that for sure. I don't think he had a 50-foot fucking USB cable attached to that thing. I doubt it. So he wasn't looking at the stairwell. And the reason he probably wasn't looking at the stairwell for the most part, because he didn't have to worry about it until the cops showed up and figured out a way to get through it. And that L bracket, he probably figured that it was enough of a deterrent to keep people from using the stairwell, just civilians, security, maintenance, any of that stuff, until the cops actually decided to start, breaching doors. And maybe he thought, because of his internet searches of the SWAT use explosives and all that sort of stuff, maybe he expected that door to get breached. And maybe that was going to be his clue on when the cops were there, when SWAT was there, when they were ready to start, pounding on his fucking door. Maybe he was waiting for that explosion in the stairwell. Maybe he thought that was problematic, right? Because blasting a door in a stairwell, especially a steel door like that, which I don't know if that's steel or not. I think that's debated a little bit, but if they're going to blast a door in that stairwell, I mean, that's going to be problematic, right? Because that explosion, man, it's going to rattle through that stairwell. That's crazy. But, aside from that, just straight up, dude, he didn't have he had a view of the entirety of the hallway. And if it was actually 250 yards, like he's saying, which I don't think it is, personally, I just don't. But if it is, 100 yards, 250 yards, whatever it happens to be, that's the view he has. So he can see anybody coming down that direction, right? And you can shoot through that door and hit them, or at least get them down to where, they're not going to be progressing. Fatal funnels, he's calling it, whatever. And that's, to me, I don't think that bracket was there to keep these guys out. Personally, I think that bracket was probably there to keep just your randoms, your security, your maintenance, any hotel staff, plus civilians coming through that door, especially after he'd already had his door attempted to be accessed. And if he did have any kind of surveillance set up, like the peephole cam and stuff like that, while he was not in the room, he would have known that people were trying to get into his door a couple times before this all went down. So who knows? Just my 2 cents on that.
A small pry bar, and we were able to pop that L bracket off and open the door to see the suspect's door.
Yeah, see, that's all it took. It took a small pry bar to pop that thing off. Yeah, I don't think it was there to keep SWAT out, because it just wasn't going to.
We're in the room, and when we did, so we opened the door. Just to the left of us is the double doors of this.
He would have welded that motherfucker shut if he wanted to keep the SWAT out.
We at the end of the hallway, where the suspect had shot through numerous times, shot through the door. So you have debris on the ground, holes through the door, and you knew that he had shot through that door. Across from us was 134, the other room that he had.
So that's another thing that's a little crazy. You think about it, you put yourself in the shoes of these people, right? And they're up there and they're looking at this door that had been shot through. They know that bullets had been ringing down that hallway at some point throughout the night, and you're sitting there right next to that door thinking, and you don't know what kind of angles he's got inside that door at this point. So that would be a little unnerving to think about that, and to actually be there in the moment. I would think, to know that that's a thing, right? This guy, you can't step in the hallway. You're stuck in this stairwell. As soon as you step in that hallway, this dude could fucking cap you. So that would be a little nerve wracking, I think. Be a little crazy.
Well, he had placed a room service cart in front of that door. And so when we look at it, when we open the door, we see a room service cart draped with, a sheet. And then we see wires coming from it under the suspect's door. So I know now he had rigged that with cameras to see down the hallway, because again, he's trying to funnel us down the hallway. But at the time, what are we thinking when I'm hearing multiple attacks across all?
See, he doesn't mention the camera that he put the plate on top of to hide it was aimed at the stairwell door. So I've always thought this. I think that those cameras were both facing down the hallway. I don't think they were facing the stairwell door at all.
Las Vegas, which all turned out to be ghost calls, this is an explosive. So, we come up with a quick,
now you're more fucked, right? Now you're staring down a fucking bomb, what you think is a bomb. You're staring that down, and you have a bunch of holes in this door. So this guy was shooting down that hallway. I'm not a cop or anything like that, dude. I've never been in the military, but that sounds like a logistical fucking nightmare, because you stick your head out that door, and that thing, if that really was a bomb, which it wasn't, we know now because Monday morning quarterbacking, but at the time, you walk through that door, you could be blasted any fucking minute. You could be dead any fucking second, and this dude could start rattling bullets out of that hallway. So if you can see the holes in the door, then chances are he can shoot at you, is what I would think. That I would always, and he probably could, right? Because he had that hallway right there. So yeah, he could get angles. This motherfucker could definitely get angles. If he knew you were there, which, he wouldn't have, because cameras weren't facing the stairwell. If they were, and then also if he was in 134, he could definitely rattle some bullets down into that stairwell. So, to think that, yeah, any minute this could go fucking south, dude. I could be a fucking pink mist, dude, any second. That's intense. That's insane.
See plan of what we're gonna do, and in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this is probably an IED, given the chaos down below and everything that we're confronted with. So I can run down 30 minutes to our cars now at this point, through the convention space and the aquarium and all that, and grab a bomb dog, taking me out as a tactical response, and try and run a dog on it. But again, people down below have been shot. He had stopped shooting at this point, the suspect had, but in my head, it's like, we can't get medical forward to help people until we clear this and declare that a warm zone. Little did I know, our fire department, because we trained actively with them, violated their own policies to go forward and provide medical assistance.
Did they though? Did they? Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, they set up that thing at the Las Vegas Boulevard and, oh God, I don't remember the cross street. But yeah, okay, so the intersection, they did set up a triage center. Which, hey, good on them, dude. You're about to shit talk the fucking fire department, but hey, good on them, dude. At least they were willing to actually save some motherfuckers. You guys spent so much time getting to this guy that people died, and it wasn't just that the response of, oh, we were there 2 minutes after the shooting had stopped. Yeah, I get that, but you didn't do anything for another hour. So bro, like, I understand, it's a hard situation, because I understand what he's saying, right? He's staring down what he thinks is an IED. He's looking at a doorway. He's standing next to a doorway with bullet holes in it, knowing that this person is shot down that hallway. He doesn't know how many people are in this fucking room. He doesn't know if there's people, elsewhere within this this mess. He doesn't know if this is a terrorist attack or what the fuck is going on. But at the same time, bro, like you're shit talking the fire department who's out there saving people. And personally, I think that they could have done more, right? They could have had, like I said, they could have allowed the ambulances to at least get closer than the fucking Hooters Hotel. I mean, come on. And the reason you're having all these problems with people calling in, shootings elsewhere, right? And so the shootings elsewhere are also causing logistical problems with your manpower, because now your manpower has to go to those various places and clear those various areas, right? That problem is being produced because of your lack of inaction or your timing of your actions. So for you, when you're sitting up there till 10 minutes after 11 or whatever, almost an hour after the shooting had started, and you're talking shit about the fire department, just saying, fuck it, we're here to save lives, we're going to do it. I mean, bro, like, I like your leadership ideas. I like how you explain that. I do. But I don't like that you're not willing to admit to the faults of that night, right? Because there were many. And that was a huge one. That was a massive one. That cost people their fucking lives.
Extract people, get people hurt to hospitals, and citizens have done the same thing. But at this time, it's like you need to clear this so we can get people out. So the bomb dog's out. I could call the bomb squad again. Takes a very long time to get them there, get them operational, and also we have a room with the suspect and it shot through a door. If we could even get forward and try and X-ray it, and
why does it take them a long time, bro? Like, why? Why does it take them a long time? Why in this city like that, where you're expecting, because they claim they're expecting a terrorist attack anytime. You've been threatened by terrorist attacks. Obviously, the terrorism in the Middle East and all that sort of stuff is based off of explosives and bombs, because it's the only way they have to really fight over there. When all that is an issue, why does it take that long for you to get? Why didn't you bring your dog up with you, first of all? But I'm not going to nitpick him. He made his decisions. It is what it is. He thought he was going up to a shooting. He wasn't expecting the bomb, which, he just wasn't, maybe he just didn't think about that. Maybe he didn't think that was a possibility, but not to shit on this guy. But why does it take your department that long to have a bomb squad deploy and, get to a hotel? It doesn't make any sense. That makes it zero fucking sense, right? Because if you had an actual problem where there was an actual bomb and your bomb squad's going to take an hour and a fucking half to get there, Christ, man, what are we doing? Like, why even have a bomb squad? Why don't you just have the fucking dogs, dude? What are you doing? I don't understand that logic.
Do things like that, which we knew we couldn't. So ultimately the plan was, we're going to breach this door and hope this doesn't explode, and if it does, then the next team will be able to come in and do what they have to do.
And so you started to see him get emotional, dude, because he realizes, like, at any moment in that point, he was just going to be gone. Like I said, you're going to be pink mist at any second, dude. You're just done. I get that.
Have you ever
Oh,
wished
come
you could...
on, dude. Really? Man, this channel. How'd you guys get advertising, dude? You're a small channel. This thing only had about 1,000 views when I watched it. Had under 1,000, I believe.
Dave Newton had a ballistic shield that I brought with me, and at the time, only K9 and SWAT had ballistic shields. Now we have, they're available to every officer in the field, but So Dave shielded up to the suspect's door that he had shot through. Now the guts that it takes Dave and Levi to do that, to then hang an explosive breach on a door that had been shot through with a rifle that many times, and shield and all and our gear, that still takes a certain amount of fortitude to do. So he hangs the breach on the suspect's door. I'm covering the second door. I see a camera on the room service card, so I reach down and flip it over so it's not on us. How effective that is, if he's in watching us, he knows we're there anyway, but it made me feel better in the moment.
So you say flip the camera over. I believe we see him put a plate on top of it in the video, and I believe he said that in his statement too, if I remember right.
And we go back into the little, there's a landing on the other side of the stairwell, or the other side of the door leading to the stairwell that we were it's where we were operating from. Step back in, call down to the command post that had really just been set up. By the time people get there, set up the command post and just let them know, hey, we're going to breach this door. We'll let you know what's going to happen. So we conduct an explosive breach on that door, and we have a positive breach. Now, I think sometimes what's lost is a lot of guys get in and they talk about these tactical debriefs, and we get to all the tactics and do the cool guy stuff. And I'll tell you, I had an Apple Watch on at the time, and the timeline of my watch was way better than the timeline the investigators initially had, because my heart rate got to about 161 when we breached that door, which when you know the science behind it. And
so how crazy of a statement is that, man? His timeline of his watch and his heart rate told him a better timeline than the investigators that they had. That's that explains a lot, to be honest with you.
Some of the things that I teach is like, that's right about like, you're going to start to lose fine motor skills. For me, it's, I can tell you, see, look at my body camera. When I threw my gear on, it turned my body camera to my face, which I got a lot of crap for because I thought I was trying to be like a celebrity or something. I just didn't really care about it at the time. But I may have looked calm, but my hand, so I had the cool guy vertical foregrip on my rifle. My hand kept going numb. And afterwards I was talking to Levi, like, why is my hand kept going numb? That's a weird thing. He's like, well, you were squeezing that foregrip so tight, no blood was getting into your hand. And that was all my stress was like right there in this hand, because I kept having to shake it out before we would do anything so I could, make sure that I was able to be effective. And I switched to an angled foregrip after, so I couldn't do that on the way. But so we breached the door, and I hear, the fire alarm goes off. I can still smell gunpowder. I can feel like, the wind from the windows that he had broken out. And now we have a door open.
That's going to piss a lot of people off. The windows that were broken out. Anyway, that makes sense. But you can smell the gunpowder. That's fucking kind of crazy, because all that shit they've been collecting in that room probably start blowing down the hallway.
And we have now. Initially, you generally think breach and go, but really we breached the door expecting some sort of response, right? Because he'd already shot through the door. Is that going to happen? But nothing happened. We didn't breach the door. When I look through the door, I see a scoped AR-10 rifle on the ground next to the door, which he had set up. I believe at this point now he's dead, and we don't know exactly his mindset, but.
Now, curiosity, man. Now that he mentions that, I wonder if that was one of the few AR-10s that actually had a magazine attached to it. I don't remember. I don't think it does in the photos, but I don't remember if they logged it as having a magazine in it.
That was set up for our response, not for shooting down on the crowd. And you have these also dumb thoughts of anybody that served a lot of search warrants. We breach the door and I see the gun and I'm like, oh, we got the right room. Which is, when you think about it, it's such a dumb thought. He'd already shot through the door. We had the room service car, and we knew where he was at. But, it's just those little like, okay, we're at the right room. So we step out. When we didn't immediately receive gunfire, we step out in the hallway. I'm joined by another team with one SWAT officer, a couple patrol guys, and we ultimately make entry into the suspect's room. I cover the second door. The front of the team makes entry, and then once we're in, I then come in and at the tail end, and we begin to clear out the room. We find the suspect deceased on the ground by one of the broken windows with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. We clear out.
All right. Now, everyone knows I'm not a conspiracy guy, but the way he just said that sounded way scripted. It just did. It sounded so scripted.
The rest of the room. Now, the adjoining door between the two rooms that he had rented out had blown shut because he had a window broken in each one. So we did a secondary explosive breach.
So he thinks because I this has got to be a thought, because he wouldn't know this for sure. What he just said, he wouldn't know for sure why that door was shut unless he actually heard it shut during the breach, which I greatly fucking doubt. Because it was quite a ways away from the breach door at that point. I don't think he knew for a fact that this is what happened, but I think this is probably, and this is what's interesting to me, because this is a cop's perspective of what they think happened. But he thinks that the adjoining room door was actually most likely open at the time of the breach, and because of the breach, that door had slammed shut, and that's the reason they had to breach the second door. So that's, to me, that's interesting.
On that second room, and when we did that secondary explosive breach, an officer had a negligent discharge. It was not Levi. I'll make sure I say that, but
yeah, but he doesn't want to say who it was. He doesn't want to mention his name. He ain't gonna name drop. Which, I'm not gonna hate him for that, but still.
In whether it's the stress or equipment or all that, that's not my story to tell. So we then clear out the second room. And again, when I talk about these incidents, there is a distinct lack of intelligence, right? So we get the suspect's ID, we send it down to the command post, kind of look through the room for clues, and we have multiple suspects. Is there somebody else? We're hearing all these other calls on the radio. By the end, I end up, after we get intel down, I get my team together and we go down to go to the next one. But we're starting to realize, okay, this might just be one guy, and these calls are what they are, as ghost calls. By the time we get down to the floor, officers have been sent to these other calls, and we realized what it was, to the ground floor of the Mandalay Bay. Because our goal now, we're like, okay, we got to go to the next one. Like, let's go, and this is still happening. So then I go over to the command post, which have been set up across the street at the South Central Area Command. Walk in, hand my body camera to the investigators that were showing up, and I spend the next 12 hours helping put strike teams at every property on the strip.
So he handed off his body cam at the command post. I wonder if that's kind of a regular thing. And yeah, that's that weird though. That's strange that you would. I mean, I guess for him it makes sense because he was the one that was in there, and now they're trying to gather intelligence, right? So they're going to watch that body cam immediately, try and figure out what the hell actually is going on up in that room, since he was in the room. But that's kind of strange to me, man, that unless they give him another one to replace it, now he's going to go to other calls and he's not going to have a body cam on him. That's weird to me. But I guess I get it, but it's just strange.
Again, Las Vegas had a black eye. We got punched in the face. We didn't make sure everybody knew that, we were doing the right thing. People.
That's a story you're not going to hear a lot. This situation, what you had to go through, the forward thinking that you had to have and your team, and everyone being on the same page going, hey, we need to do this, and this is what's important for a number of reasons that you laid out. The first aid being, administered to the victims has to, you got to clear the room first. But, you said they disregarded that, which is another just heroic incident that happened that day by somebody else.
Well, I'm glad he at least said that, because it sounded like a dunk when Bitsko was saying that.
Josh, the one question I have: you're so jacked up with everything you do and mindset of your task that you needed to do. Once the room's clear, he's dead. at what point or when does the impact of what happened and the numbers and everything that happened downstairs kind of get to you and reach you that what really just happened?
I love to have it, tell you that. So then I went home and, watched the news story and met with a therapist and all that thing, but it just didn't happen. I began working 12-hour shifts following the incident because now every bag left in Vegas was a explosive device that we had needed bomb dogs and all that. And truly, I didn't want to process it. Like it was on the news 24/7. You had the president flew into town. President Trump flew into town a couple days after, and we got to go meet. Those of us that were involved got to go meet him and like all of that. But I'll tell you, I was just more numb than anything else. So, did I realize the magnitude pretty quick? I mean, I think I realized the magnitude when I was heading there. But as far as like truly processing what happened and it's why I do what I do now is I didn't want to. Like, I think a lot of cops are really good at just like trying to compartmentalize and trying to push it down. But at the end of the day, some of this stuff is just too big. And, you need to find help to help you through that, through professionals through that. And I didn't do any of that for years after.
So there's different types of gunfights that cops can get in, or different types of traumatic situations, crisis incidents. One of them is the one that happens very quickly. All of a sudden, you jump out of the car, something happens, you get involved. And it's over fairly quickly. And then there's like this, which is this prolonged step-by-step, or at least you reasonably believe, I'm going up to confront somebody who is slaughtering people. And I have every reason to believe I'm going to get into a critical incident and I might not come out of it. That stress is compounded because it's longer. And then having to work, and Tom and I and anybody else that worked 9/11 can tell you, 12-hour days afterwards and being right in the middle of that critical incident all the time, dealing with the result of it for days and weeks and months, that prolongs the traumatic event in the brain of a person, right?
Yeah, and well, I mean, that's the thing is too, you can't get, let's say,
I don't think you can compare this to 9/11 because 9/11 was a lot different. 9/11 was a terrorist attack, and at that point, you knew that there were terrorists on American soil that were doing some fucked up shit. And with October 1st, it was just one old man. Why they were searching every bag for IEDs, because there was no IEDs involved in this whatsoever, is a little strange. But I mean, I get it. It's just, these are two totally separate beasts here, man. I mean, not to downgrade what happened on October 1st, but it's not comparable to 9/11 whatsoever.
Listen, I'm a firm believer now at this point in my life is you have to build the resilience before to be able to, process through traumatic incidents after, but also you have to be able to and willing to put in the work after to work through and process what you've been through. And I think that it's easier to throw yourself into work and I'm going to work these 12-hour shifts and I'm going to do this and I'm going to say it doesn't bother me. But if you're a human, this will bother you. These types of incidents I mean, you said it at the opening of the podcast. It changes people. And don't think that it has to be the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history for it to have an effect. I mean, then you talk about the cumulative trauma of just being a cop anywhere for any amount of time. And I make sure that when I'm talking about this or when I'm teaching people about it, that, it doesn't have to be something at this level to affect you. And it doesn't have to be something at this level for you to put in the work after and really try and process it. And I didn't at the time. I really, chose some unhealthy coping mechanisms like so many of us do. I mean, it wasn't until later in my life when I was trying to build wellness and that I realized the damage I did by not confronting it. And again, it's like you can't get away from it. I was at the gym and people would come up to me, hey, you were on the news, you did this, tell me about that.
All right, so I think we're good on that, because basically what he's going to talk about now is straight up in here, man. I don't want to see myself, dude. So I'm gonna turn this thing off because that's annoying. Sucks looking at yourself, but basically through all this, man, the only thing I could say that I can take away from all this is this guy's a good leader, man. He's got the leadership skills. I think that's that's a thing, but I don't think there's really an aha moment here, a gotcha moment. I think the only thing you got there is he did claim he set up his own timeline, saying that Campos was shot before the bullets started going down the hallway. So there's that. That's a thing, I guess. And then otherwise, I mean, it's pretty much straight narrative as far as most of this goes. I don't like the fact that he's glazing his department. I don't think everything they did was perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I think what he did was probably fine. I don't think he did anything wrong at any point in that. I can shit all over how long it took him to breach the room, but that was a decision that was made by Levi Hancock and probably people higher level than him, because he did have to ask for permission to do it. So, or he did have to let people know when he did it. And he did. I don't remember if he asked for permission or not on the radio, but he did talk about doing the breach on the radio. So he was communicating with higher ups on some of this stuff. And I think even after the fact, we saw on Levi's cam that Levi wasn't even sure that was the right thing. He was having to justify it later to his people, saying, yeah, that's the only thing we could do. That was the only thing we could do it. And so that justification tells me he wasn't completely sure that what he'd done was the right thing, and he needed verification on that. So even he had his doubts at some point. But, the one thing I can say that I didn't like that he was saying is that, the whole idea that it was the civilians and it was up to them, or, well, they self-evacuated, so we didn't have to. No, you still had to, bro. Like, you still had to do that. That was a thing. And the police did do that, but they did it much, much, much later. And they went after, by that point, the only people they were evacuating were the people that were not hit, the people that were fine, But no, I think if there was something that the LVMPD could take from this and learn from this, it's that they need to figure out the emergency response better when an incident like this happens. For instance, like I said, the street, it wasn't even the venue, right? You don't even have to drive an ambulance onto the venue, but there was the street across from the venue, right? And that street, was not being hit by gunfire, unless you believe the Melissa Ramirez narrative that someone put out there. But, that street was not being shot at, right? And you had people that were bleeding out on that street, and you had a cop begging for ambulances to show up because he was watching people bleed out. And, at that point, shit, why couldn't you get an ambulance there? Why couldn't you get the fire department there? And I truly believe that you possibly cost lives doing that, because like I said, there's one lady that gets him in that ambulance. I know nobody caught it. Well, nobody really has done that nobody focuses on that. So, but there is a lady that gets on one of those ambulances that says she's having a problem breathing. and that there's a lady that ends up deceased that has those exact same clothes that was shot through the lung, and I believe she was shot in the back, and she matched the description. I don't know. But if that's the case, man, then she was alive when she jumped on the ambulance. She wasn't alive the next day. And if that's the case, man, I mean, if you could have got an ambulance there, 30 minutes earlier, because that's about the time that guy was screaming on the radio to get an ambulance up there, she might have lived. She might have lived. So to, glaze your department and say like, oh, our response was fucking great. No. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but I'm not going to say it was amazing, because people still died due to some inaction and some chaos, and some of that chaos and stuff. Shit talk in the fire department because they defied their training and they went and set up a triage. Well, fuck, dude. I mean, at least somebody was going to be a hero, man. You guys were up there trying to stop the shooter. That's fine. I get it. That's heroic, all that sort of stuff. But these people were out there trying to save lives, so they were doing their job. You can't. Yeah, that was frustrating to hear. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, as far as all his leadership stuff, man, I agree with all of it. He seems like he's kind of got his head on straight as somebody who's dealt with leadership roles, and I think he's pretty accurate. Now, obviously, policing is different than any other job out there, but nevertheless, if you've ever been in charge of something and charge of people, and in whatever industry you happen to be in, and all hell starts breaking loose, I mean, shit starts fucking falling apart, and everyone's looking to you to fucking deal with shit. He does break that down pretty well, and I think as far as what he's saying, he's pretty on the spot with that. So I don't have an issue with that. But I think that's it for this. I mean, this was a video, had like 900 some views. People were, I had somebody in the comments ask me to go over it. So, so I decided to. This is the second time doing this video, because the first time, man, I got a shit microphone, man. I bought a microphone thinking it would be better. Then when I went back to listen to it, it was choppy. It was terrible. It just sounded like garbage. So I decided to go old school, go back to the laptop and do this again. Well, anyway, everybody, I think I'm out of here for this one. It's been kind of a long one. So everybody have a good night out there. I don't know, man. The anniversary is coming up. I don't know what I'm going to do for that. I am thinking about just kind of ranting on that thing, because I don't know, man. Been out of this for a while, dude. Dude. Like, I don't know. Vegas is, I go through things, man. I go through times when I don't want to fucking deal with it. Then other times when, I just go crazy on it. It's always in the back of my head, but I don't know. I keep saying I'm done. And every time I say that, I mean it. But it just keeps pulling me back in. So I'll see what I plan on doing for that. I think I'm actually going to have that night off, so I will have time to do something, whatever it is. I don't know. I ain't driving to Vegas. Thought about that. I did think about that, but nah, I don't think so, man. Vegas is, it's not what it used to be, and I just don't feel like doing the 4-hour drive. So 8-hour drive, because 4 hours back. But anyways, I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't know. Hopefully, somebody took something out of it. If you want to watch this for yourself, the whole interview is, I think I put it in the description of the video, I believe. I hope. If not, maybe I'll do that. Have a good day. Everybody stay safe out there. The world's fucking going crazy. as always. And oh shit, I'm in the wrong button. And here we go.
Dude, pointed stick.
Pointed stick. Pointed stick.
Pointed stick.
Pointed stick.
Pointed stick.
Pointed stick.
Whoa, pointed stick.
That pointed stick.
Pointed stick.
Stick. We don't have any time for your trolling behavior on this channel. It just isn't welcome here. And so, good riddance to you.